Hi, everybody. It's Ashley of Day-to-Day Social Work. I am a private online tutor, and I specialize in assisting people to pass the license exam in social work on the master's, bachelor's, and now clinical level. You can find me online at Day-to-Day Social Work on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So welcome, everybody, to Sunday Social. We have a very, very special guest in the building tonight. And her name is Ayoka, and you may have remembered hearing me talk about her sometimes in the videos. Excuse me. So Ayoka, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ayoka. I am a social worker, I'm a mental health therapist, I'm a blogger, and also a lifestyle coach. I'm located in New York City, and you can find me at ayokatheblogger.com.
Great, thank you. So as y'all might have remembered, way back, seems like a long, long time ago, way back in January, I was looking for a mentee, and I was also looking for a mentor, which I haven't found yet, but I was looking for a mentee, somebody to connect with so that I could give back and give some time to, and just help in the field of social work. So I had, I think, 4 or 5 people to reach out, and then I had I guess like an informal interview with 2 people. And so from the 2, it's been me and Ayoka since January, right? January of this year. So I was looking for a mentee, but I didn't know what I was getting was actually a great, great, great colleague instead. And so Ayoka is very experienced. She definitely helps keep me in line, keep me structured, keep me my mind open. And she's actually a therapist as well. And so instead of getting a mentee, I got a very, very great colleague. So I don't like to call her my mentee because she helps me just as much as I help her, I think. And, she's very on top of things and organized, and I'm the complete opposite, believe it or not. So definitely glad to have a new colleague in Ayoka, and maybe we'll start the mentee search again at the beginning of next year. So Ayoka, let's talk social work. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay. All right. So of course, this is pre-recorded for Sunday Social. So we do have some things prepared so that we won't be prolonging things. And, I know people have things to do on Sunday evenings. So we do have some questions prepared, and I do have a cough drop, or else y'all will be hearing me cough all throughout this. So the first question, Ayoka, how did you become familiar with day-to-day social work?
Great question. I became familiar with day-to-day social work when I was studying for my MSW. I was scouring the internet and I found you, and I was like, oh, this person does tutoring. They have all these programs. I was really excited to find you online.
Okay, cool. All right. So what prompted you to reach out for the mentor-mentee opportunity?
Yeah. So my background, I feel, is more like macro social work, administrative, programmatic social work. And it was my first time really getting into a little bit of the micro level, the one-on-one therapy sessions. And I was like, oh, I'm going to need someone in addition to my supervisor to really help me navigate this process. And then when you made the announcement, I was thrilled. I was like, perfect. This is exactly what I need. I need someone who has experience in the field of social work for a number of years, and that can really lend their experience to just helping me navigate.
Okay, cool. I'm glad you reached out because we really have connected, y'all. Like seriously, we really connect once a month.
Yeah.
And we've been pretty much on it since January. I don't think we've really missed a month yet. Here we are almost in September. And so, we talk about everything that you can think about related to social work in our not sessions, but like in our meetings. And it's really mostly on a Sunday when we meet.
Yes.
And it's just like catching up with a colleague and bouncing ideas off. Like, what do you get out of the relationship?
Honestly, the thing that I get the most out is that collaboration, that whole each one teach one. I really like the fact that we can bounce ideas off of one another. You have an idea, a different perspective, I have a different perspective, and we can just kind of come together and make sense of that. I think that's the most important thing for me. Especially being a social worker, right? Like I don't say I know everything, and it's nice to have someone who has another idea and can offer like, some guidance.
Yes, and Ayoka, definitely, to me, you have like a very executive kind of like, you have a very executive corporate kind of personality, which I think is really, really good for someone like me, because throughout my career in social work, I've always been a case manager. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like you said, you work on a more macro level. And
Mm-hmm.
so, where I'm lacking in those kind of macro level thoughts, you are on it, on it, on it. And I'm like, oh, great. Like, I'm like, oh, we got to collaborate. Like you said, collaborate on something in the future. I don't know what it's going to be, but we're like, yes, we got to do this. And then I'm always like, I have to get all of my stuff in a row before I bring you in on anything, because I want to make sure that it's right before I try to bring, try to use your expertise on things and bring you in. So definitely glad to have the collaboration that we have. Let's see what else. So what sparked your interest in becoming a social worker?
Uh, um, so I got my undergrad in psychology, right? And for a little bit, I was working with youths in foster care. And that was the first time that I even realized that there was a title such as social work. I just don't think that I always thought social work was kind of like that phrase that everyone uses for anyone who's working in in any type of community service. I was like, oh yeah, social worker. But I was like, wait, there's a special particular track dedicated to social work, and there's a license associated with it. I spent about 4 years doing that and really made the decision to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of social work before deciding to commit to it. So that's what got me excited about social work. And then that's what made me get on the journey to becoming a social worker.
Okay, great, great. So did you enjoy working with that population?
I did enjoy working with that population. I think the thing that got me really excited about that population was I was doing a lot of micro work. And then I was like, ooh, in order for change to happen, it needs to be on the macro level. And then that's what got me into macro level social work. So there's not, like, I'm in New York City, there's not a lot of programs that have macro level social work programs. I think there's only one other program other than the one I went to at Columbia. It's at Hunter. So it's just really nice to see that there are some programs. Most of the time there aren't. It's just like that whole like clinical social work. And I'm like, okay, or policy, or I'm like, okay, I want to do something a little bit different. That's a mixture of both. I was able to find a really great program.
Okay, that's great, great. Okay. Any advice for any new social workers? And this is like the question that I love, because now that we're very experienced in the field and there are lots of people coming behind us, I think that we always have to give back, of course. So any advice to those new to the field?
Yeah, I think that the one thing that I would say is really get your long-term and short-term goals together. It really helps to just keep you focused. At least it does for me, at least. I like having short-term goals, something that I can reach in the next 3 to 6 months, and then long-term, kind of like how my journey in social work ended up, right? I was like, I want to see the good, the bad, and the ugly, which meant I had to stay there for a little bit and actually like follow my clients throughout, several clients, see some of the barriers, see some of the things that went really well, and really be there long. So I would say for the new social workers, is just have a plan, stick to it, and don't be afraid to pivot if needed.
Yes, that's great advice, because a lot of people do end up pivoting. And, some people start on the macro track and then they might decide they want to go micro. And then there's electives and psychodiagnostics and all these other different, courses. So definitely don't be afraid to pivot. I definitely agree with you on that. Any words of inspiration to those who feel like they're stuck in their journey, or they may become stuck in their journey towards reaching whatever level they wish to reach in the social work field?
I would say to those who might feel stuck, really referring back to the short term, long term, and any pivoting that may need to happen. And also reevaluating, and it's okay to say, you know what, this isn't for me, or I need to do something different depending on where you are. Like for me, I did, like I told you, the more of the administrative things for quite a while. And then I was like, oh, well, let me try going into clinical. Let me see what that's about. I do have the background in it. I kind of like, I, you know, did all my courses and stuff in it. And I just kind of landed in administrative. And I tried something new and I said, hey, I like it. I'm going to continue with this, you know, and I do have a lot to offer. And just knowing that you do have skills to offer and to share with others, really keeping that in central.
Any challenges along the way for you in your journey on becoming a social worker and now as you continue to elevate in the field?
Definitely. I think one of the challenges, I think you and I just kind of discussed this earlier, just kind of, you don't have to know everything. I think that that's kind of where I get stuck sometimes. I'm like, oh, I want to be able to give my clients this, and I want to be able to do this, and really knowing that it's a journey. And the same way that the other person sitting across from me is on their journey and you're just with them and just really paying attention to that. I don't have to know everything. And not only that, it's not my place to know everything, right? In clinical social work.
Yeah.
The person's telling their story and their experiences, and I'm just listening and guiding. I don't have to know everything.
Right. And I think that's very important, you know, as myself being a new therapist, you just want to get in there and fix. But, you know, a lot of times, even if we were able to fix things, it's not about how we would fix it. It's up to the client to fix it.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay. So you're currently in supervision, right, for your clinical license. So any advice on anyone seeking supervision, and what has your experience been with it so far?
I would say that supervision is a process. I feel like the way I envisioned what supervision would look like in my mind, and like, oh, I'm going to get this from my supervisor and this is going to happen. And then this is and this. Did all of those things happen? No. Did some of those things happen? Sure. But I feel like just really not having this elaborate expectation and making sure that the expectations are set with your supervisor and not like in your mind alone, right? So making sure, I think that would be one of the advice that I would give. And also the other thing is that your supervisor is one of the many resources that you could have, not the only end all be all. And then also to remain curious.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Okay. So in the next 2 years, where do you see your career going in the field? And then also 5 years?
Yes. In the next 2 years, I really see myself leading up to those short-term goals that I talked about. I really would like to get my C's, my clinical license, full licensure, and really open my own practice, my own business, and share with others what I know. I think that that's the next natural progression. And I think that the good thing about my particular background is that I have so much to offer, right? I have that macro and that macro micro lens, which I can come together and offer a lot to others. So I'm really wanting to put that in place. And I see that as like the 5-year plan, but then I see myself step by step completing that within the 2 years, and then ultimately having a robust personal business.
Yes, and it definitely will be robust, and it will thrive, and it will be everything you want it to be. I'm claiming it with you. So yeah, definitely, I think it's very important that, like you said, to have that macro and micro, because you know, as social workers, sometimes those who are in a micro level, we always complain, or you know, not necessarily complain, but like express our disappointment with people in the macro positions, because sometimes they're not even social workers and they don't know what's going on in the trenches. And so I always say, you know, if you're going to be at the head of an agency that is mostly for people in the helping profession, then you definitely need leadership who have been in the field or know something about the micro and the macro, so that you
Mhm.
kind of, they definitely depend on each other, the micro and the
Yes,
macro. So yeah.
most
Okay.
definitely.
So that's great. So like I said, I really do think that you're going to be successful in whatever it is that you do, because you're a go-getter and you want it and you will make it happen. So
Thank
um,
you.
one of the things you've already done is start your own blog. And so what made you start your blog, and how do you decide which topics to write about?
Yes. So what made me start my blog? Starting my blog was definitely a gift to myself. So before social work was in the picture, I always wanted to be a writer. So weird, right? I always wanted to be a writer. Since I was younger, I always wrote like short stories, poems, and I really held myself back for many years and really procrastinated. And it was just a gift to myself. I was like, okay, you have to do this. Enough is enough. And just being intentional with my writing and finding steps to get there. So one of the things that I did was at one of my jobs, I decided to like spearhead the weekly newsletter and make myself responsible for that, and really starting to write for an audience and getting used to that type of writing. In like an interactive kind of way, right? Because the newsletter is somewhat interactive. Like people are like, oh, what does that mean? And follow up with this and sharing good news and different type of writing styles. So I really like that. In terms of how I decide the topics for my blog, I think most of that is really like real life experiences. I think I try my best to write personal content, and I try my best to write content that speaks to lifestyle, mental health. Yeah, I try just to share who I am essentially, but make it a way where like I'm sharing, you're learning, I'm learning from you, like just a community, a collaborative community.
Okay. Okay. And so on your blogs, is there a spot for people to comment?
Yes, they are comments. You can leave a comment on it.
Okay, so it is interactive. So if
Yeah,
people have like a topic or, something that they want to hear from you about, then they could definitely put that in the comments.
most definitely. And I also have there's like a contact section there if there's anyone who wants to like say like, hey, can you write about this? Can you do this? I'm having trouble with this. Can you help me? I'm always open to suggestions as well.
Like Ask Ayoka.
Yes, it is. I think that's exactly, it's like ask, yeah. Hello at ayokatheblogger.com.
Okay, okay. So y'all, of course, I'm gonna put all of her information in the description box, but definitely check out her blog. I mean, I know we're gonna get to all that, but since we're here now, I'm telling y'all, go and check it out. It's very great. It's very neat and well written. So make sure you check it out. So one of the topics, because I had to peek in there and see what was going on. And like I said, it's very neat and clean. And I really like the look of it. And I love the topics. And like you are, I would say, a professional writer from when I looked at it. I'm like, oh, okay. So one of the topics when I went to take a little peek was aphantasia. And I was like, oh, what's
Mhm,
this? Because I'd never heard of it before. And
mhm.
when you see these words that look like it could be a disorder and you're a social worker, you're like, oh, let me go and look this up and see what it is.
Mhm.
So how did you stumble upon aphantasia?
Yes. So it was a couple months ago, I happened to be watching a YouTube video. And you know how like you're watching YouTube and like another video plays? So the other video queued up, it was playing, and I saw the word and I was like, oh, that person must have like this, something's going on with them. I wonder what's happening. So I'm there like passively listening. Then the person's talking about their like mind's eye, and I'm like, wait, what is this person talking about? And I'm starting to feel like me and this person are on the same page. And I'm like, wait a minute. I think that's me. So that's how I came across it. And that just kind of started the bug where I started researching and trying to figure out what's happening here.
Okay. Uh-oh. I think a dog is barking outside. I hope y'all can hear that. But anyway, so okay. So what exactly is aphantasia? Like what is your
Mhm.
experience with it, and what do you define it as from your research?
Yeah, so aphantasia is defined as like you cannot call upon your mind's eye. So I am unable to think of an image like a car and see it in my spatial. I don't know how it how it happens to others. I'm just not able to visualize a car when I hear the word car. I think I spoke about this before. Like when I think of car, I break it down. I'm like, okay, four wheels, four doors, two doors, windshield, whatever color, like something to get you to and fro. Like that's what I think about when I hear car. But it's not the way I did it in real life. Just now, it's not really like that. It's much more quicker, right? But that's just kind of what I envision. But I'm not like seeing a car as you and I are talking about a car.
Yes. And so when we talked about this initially in one of our little meetings, I was mind blown because I had never heard of I won't say that I had never heard of it. I've heard of the concept, but I didn't know that it had a name to go with it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, okay. I've heard of people who can't recall, like they can't see words in their mind, or they can't see images, they can't see, like you said, a car. So if you say, Ashley, think of a red car, I immediately have this red car that I once saw in my mind. If you say, Ashley, think of a blue car in the parking lot, I can see the parking lot at my apartment complex and I can see a blue car right now. But you're saying that you can't do that.
No. And it wasn't until watching that video that I realized people have the ability to do that. I was very shocked. I felt like something exploded within me. I was like, there's no way people are seeing things. I was so confused. I was like, how do you tell that apart from reality? Is it you just see a car? Like, how do you know it's a fake car and not like one from your mind's eye and not in reality? So it was a bit of a shock for me to realize that other people were having a different experience than me.
And I think that's like, it's so neat because you think that everybody is like you, like for the most part, because sometimes we can't think outside of our sociological imagination, and everything is from our reference point. And so we think, oh, well, if I can see a car in my mind, then you should be able to too. But I think it's really neat. And we had a long conversation about the mind's eye and all these different things that we can't really go into right now because of time. But like we had a full, like almost 2 hours long conversation because I was just fascinated and blown away, because the only thing I could really compare it to was people that are colorblind, even though it's completely different things, but like that same kind of concept where, you know, I can look at the flowers that are right in front of me and they're yellow and orange, but then somebody else could look at it and it's just black and white. And I met a lady earlier this year who, we were working at a vaccine clinic, and the guides had on these neon green vests. And so we were telling people after we signed them up to go to the person in the green vest. And then the lady said, hey, is that vest green or yellow? And I'm thinking, you know, because some might look at it and see green, some might look at it and see yellow. But I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh, okay, you know, I'm colorblind. I'm like, what? So I was like thinking that she just thought maybe it was yellow, and I was thinking it was green, but she couldn't see that. So, you know, now that you're aware of what aphantasia is, like, how do you feel about it? I know you said that you didn't know that people were able to do this, but like, or see things in their mind's eye. So like, how do you feel about your inability to do it? And do you feel like it's, you know, a disability or anything like that?
Yeah. So I do want to say that aphantasia is also on the spectrum, right? So they have people who kind of like what you were saying, like me, I cannot see anything. Like my mind's eye is completely shut. And then there's some folks who have hyperphantasia, where they're able to see things almost as if it's real, right? So it's on the spectrum. And then you have everyone in the middle, maybe some people see like black and white, low color, full color, you know, so it's not always the same kind of, like, that's a great example with the colorblind example. Now that I've had it, I feel like I have struggled with like, is this a disability or not, right? Because the research out isn't quite comprehensive as yet. I feel like it's something that's fairly newly researched. So there isn't a whole lot. And kind of like me, you know, I am in my 30s and I'm like, how did I live my whole life without knowing that this is a concept, right? I almost like, what? So I feel like people kind of stumble on it and then like, and I've never heard of that concept growing up, right? So I wouldn't say that it's a disability. I have struggled with trying to think like, oh, is this a disability? Is it not a disability? And in my opinion, I just kind of concluded that it wasn't, mainly because I'd come so far and didn't know that I was lacking.
Mm-hmm.
So what I now say is like, okay, I'm neurodiversity. Like, you know, this neurodiverse, I just experience things in a different way from everyone else.
Mm.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a really great way to really capture it. And I think what I think is like only right now, 1 to 3% of people are saying, yes, I have aphantasia. So it's a very small few people.
Do you think that if it were, you know, talked about more, or I guess like if people knew more about it, that number would be higher?
I definitely think so. So I've joined a couple of Aphantasia group, and what I'm noticing is the same exact experience. I heard something, this word popped up and I looked at it and this came dropped on my desk and I just looked at it and it's like, that's people's experience, like just kind of coming in contact with it, but not really learning about it in a way where it's like, oh, hey, there's some people have a mind's eye and some don't. If I would have learned that when I was like like second grade or something, 8 years old, like it'd be different. I'd be like, oh, I would be like, yes, this is me. And I would know that this is how I think and process information, might be a little bit differently than my peers.
Right, right. And so we had, like I said, even more dialogue about it, and how, you know, how if it may have affected the way that you learn, you know, when
Mm-hmm.
you're in art class, or if you
Mm-hmm.
are told to. Meditation was another thing we talked about. Like, talk about that too. You know, we talked about meditation and how guided imagery may not work for some people because they may have
Yes.
aphantasia, and we don't know that because we assume that
Mm-hmm.
everybody can envision the
Mm-hmm.
lake with the ripples and you toss the
Yes.
stone, and, you know, there are green trees with dew on the mountains and all that kind of stuff. And as I'm
Yeah.
saying that, I can see all of that as I'm saying it, but you you can't. So like,
No.
yeah, tell us about your experience, if you have any, with, you know, guided meditations, or how you feel about that.
Yeah, so the funny thing is, I've never liked guided meditations. And I wasn't sure. I just thought wasn't my thing. I was like, oh, there's so many different things. I prefer something else. In my what I really enjoy, if it's completely honest, is I prefer looking at things and like touching textures and just kind of like being in the moment, like touching a tree bark and saying, oh wow, look at the different textures that's happening here. That to me is much more relaxed, calming, and that's like my preferred way of meditation, just kind of with my senses,
Mm.
or like walking and looking at things and hearing the environment around me. But when it comes to guided meditation, I don't like it. The funny thing too is like I feel like I'm very like artistic in a weird way. Like I actually enjoy creating. So like sometimes I'm like, for a while I always like wanted to like do like interior designing. Like I love like how things come together, but I'm not able to see it come together. Like I have to actually put things together, move things around, like hold colors next to each other. And it's just like a whole process, but I'm not able to maybe see it and be like, that's what I want. No, I have to like break it down piece by piece and then step away and be like, oh, this is what I want. Only after I put down brick by brick by brick.
And as you're saying that, I'm just like, is that like a good thing in the realm of like creativity, like that you can't envision it, that you just make this masterpiece as you go along, versus
Mm-hmm.
putting it in your mind first? Because some people are like, oh, I can envision how I want my grand room to be in my house, and but you know, that kind of puts you, I think, at a state of being stuck in whatever that is that you envision in your mind, as opposed to creating something as you go along. So it sounds like you're more of like a kinesthetic person who has to touch and feel things. So I think that's cool. I think that's neat. I really do. Like, I'm completely fascinated by all of this. And it was something that I was going to say when you said that you have to touch things. I forgot what it was because I didn't want to cut you off. If I think of it, I'll come back.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, so anything else about aphantasia before we go to the next topic?
Yeah. I think that one of the things that for me that I've enjoyed about having aphantasia without knowing that that's what it was is I tend to think of myself as a collector of information. So I feel like because this is the way I think and I receive information and process, it's like I always have to like take a deep dive in everything that I do so that I'm able to remember things and recall things. So I always find myself doing that often. Like I can't just look at something and be like, oh yeah, this is really great pen with all these patterns. I'm like, oh wait, no, they're squares, they're semicircles. And I'm like kind of really looking and paying attention to it on a deeper level that maybe others aren't doing because they can just kind of visualize it at a later point.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's see. I feel like it was something else on your blog that I wanted to talk about. And I know we're going to get to the ProQOL, but it was something else on there. But okay, so we're going to talk about the ProQOL. But also, y'all, while y'all are watching this, if you feel like, hey, this is what I go through too, aphantasia, put it in the comment section or, in the chat box and let us know, if this is something new for you that you're like, oh, hey, I'm experiencing this too. And I didn't know that this is what it was, because I think it would be interesting to see, if we have anybody that's out there watching. And I know a lot of people will probably end up watching this back over the next few months, whatever. So yeah, if you are currently watching this and you experience aphantasia, let us know in the comment section.
Yes.
So also another interesting thing that I saw on your blog was about the ProQOL. I always get it mixed up. So
yeah.
Tell us what that is and how you came across that.
Yeah, it's the professional quality of life scale. I went to a webinar and it was discussed. It was the first time I ever heard of anything like that. Basically, it assessed 3 domains for those in the helping profession: compassion, satisfaction, burnout, and secondary traumatic stress. It's comprised of 30 Likert scale questions, and it just kind of helps the person know like where they are, right? If you're experiencing burnout, it calls it out for you. And based on your numbers, it tells you, based on your score, it gives you corresponding domains that you fall into that you can say, okay, yes, I'm high burnout, low burnout. And you can kind of take it from there. And then from there, you can figure out what adjustments need to be made, right? Like if you're having high burnout, maybe it means you need to pull back from your caseload, or you need to do something different. Or if you're having compassion satisfaction, maybe you feel good about what you're doing, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I thought it was very interesting because I like to do little scales and assessments and stuff like that on myself to see what the world says that I am and what those things are. So Ayoka and I actually completed it together. Well, we did it separately, but we came back together and talked about our results. And so let me pull up my results while you pull up yours.
Yes.
And I really I think it was very spot on, and I liked the assessment. And it was one part where you had to answer the questions, but they scored it kind of like in reverse, I think. So I was like, dang it, I didn't have enough time to like really process what that meant. Cause I'm like, okay, what are y'all trying to reverse on me? And how did I answer this question? And when I answered it the way that I answered it, but you want me to score myself lower, what does that really mean? But I didn't have time to really process it like that. But yeah, let's look at our test results and see. And we took this back in what, July, I think it was.
Yeah, the end of July.
So these are like month-old results, and
Yeah.
mine probably has changed in just a month. But so tell us about yours.
I would say that mine hasn't changed. Things are pretty much the same for me. So the 3 domains, compassion, I scored a 41, which was pretty high. So I feel like I have a really great connection of what it is that I'm doing in terms of, what is this, the satisfaction, compassion. Yeah, I feel it's really high. I feel really fulfilled by the work that I'm doing with my clients. Burnout, I had a 21. On the low, it's scored as low. I think that's pretty accurate. I feel like before I had a pretty high caseload, and I was able to dwindle that down and say, hey, it's too much for me. It's not something that I can do. And I think there is a blog post that I wrote about this where I had to start putting structures in place, right? Because before I go into sessions, I make sure that I clear my mind so that I can show up 100% for that person. And I'm not frantically doing something before and coming into sessions and, hey, like breathing all heavy and getting all crazy. Because then I'm thinking about, okay, well, I'm cooking right now and this is happening. I need to do this later. I really don't want to come into session like that. So I feel like just recognizing and really turning inwards and doing that self-reflection, I found a way that I'm able to figure out what I need to do to show up and what I need to take away in order to help me facilitate that. So burnout is 21, it's low. And secondary traumatic stress, it's 12. That's also low as well. I think that is a function of my caseload. My caseload does not have any high-risk clients at the moment. So that is pretty much, well, yeah, not too much high stress going on in that part. But I also think that doing the meditation before helps me too, right? Because I'm able to clear my mind, get myself together. Not that I'm a rock in sessions, but because sometimes some things do come up that I'm like, oh, that's really sad, or I've also had that similar experiences as well, but I try my best to really process that and give time for myself out after the session to process anything as well.
Okay.
What are your scores?
So my scores were for the compassion, it was 33, which is moderate. So I think it was high, moderate, and then low, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So mine was in between. And I think that's because, I think it's accurate because I do feel a little stressed at work right now because of a lot of different things. And I do feel like I'm definitely compassionate when I get on the phone with clients, but I also feel like if I get a new referral and it's something that I feel like is not something that's an appropriate referral, I will feel like, why did they send me this? Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And it seems like, my compassion isn't there. But as soon as I get on the phone with the client and I hear the person and their story, then I'm like, oh, yeah, I did need to call this person and they needed somebody to talk to. And, I get right back into social worker mode. So I think for me, it's not the actual work with the client that is causing my level to be in the middle. It's just all of the stuff that goes along with the job as far as like processes and workflows and policy and all that kind of stuff. My burnout was 23, which is moderate. And I think for the same reasons, just a lot of changes going on. I'm not completely burnt out, but I'm not like stress-free either. And then the secondary trauma stress is 12, like yours is low, because I don't really, I don't have any secondary trauma from, listening to people's stories. And I was sharing with you earlier how I did have a recent case where, I could relate to the client's story and it did kind of trigger me, but I was able to reel it in and not be affected by it, and not let it affect my session with the client. So
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a really good assessment. And any final thoughts on the assessment?
I think it's an amazing tool. I think that something that, as those in the helping profession, really checking in and making, like, even having, like, I consider my scores like a baseline score. And I feel like if ever I become, or something shifts, I would like to take it again and be like, okay, what changed? And I have like concrete evidence on what changed. Like, okay, my burnout rate is higher. And I can pinpoint, well, okay, what changed from the end of July to now, and really marking that and really working on, to get that sorted out. So I like it as a tool, and not as a one-time only tool, but something that you return to every quarter, just to check in to see how you're doing.
Okay. And so was this in relation to your post about how you kind of didn't feel motivated? And so at the time, you didn't really feel like motivated to do whatever it was that you were writing about at that time?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. I feel like one of the things that I've been struggling with, I continue to struggle with, is really motivation, inspiration. Um, that's something that sometimes gets me down a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have all these ideas, but it's like execution is not really there at the moment. And I think part of that is just being really tired and just kind of saying, well, like, I would prefer to rest. I think I wrote about that, just like growing up in a home where my dad was like a workaholic, and like resting wasn't something that was resting wasn't something that was like, yeah, you should do it, rest your body. It was like, you need to be doing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really working through some of that, and just thinking to myself, like, okay, rest is not wasted time, and really going through that and making sure that I give myself time to rest and not feeling guilty behind it. So all this is part of it too, because just knowing where I am, especially with work and dealing with individuals, I think if I'm by myself, I can be able to justify that. But if I'm giving myself to others in a way, I want to make sure that I'm presenting myself in a way that's useful to them, and that I'm not giving them something that, wouldn't be appropriate.
Right.
So definitely.
I definitely agree with that. I was experiencing that yesterday, because typically I go home to visit my mom and my grandma and all of those down in my hometown every weekend. And I didn't go this weekend because I was so drained from work. I couldn't even really get out the bed, but then I knew that I needed to rest. And so I rested on Saturday. And I told my mom I would come on Sunday, but then it was like 3 o'clock and she's like, are you coming or do you still need some more rest? And I'm like, well, I'm trying to get out the bed. I really want to come because it's like clockwork. I go every weekend. She's like, no, just rest because that's what I'm about to do too. And so I was like, are you sure? Because that guilt does come in. And she's like, no, just rest. And so I'll go tomorrow. I told her I'll come down there because I'll be back into the groove of things. So let's talk about your blog. Introduce us to it. How can we get to it? Of course, we're going to put links in the description box and on the Instagram and all of that. So tell us about how to get to it, how often we can expect for you to contribute to the blog. And, we're all social workers, so we know. Yeah. And as people can tell with my YouTube channel, I like to give quality content. So I don't want to just give something just to give something. I want it to give substance. So I think all of us would know that, if you're not posting every single day, that it's probably because you need to have something of substance and you don't have to post every day. So
you're definitely right. You can find me at ayokatheblogger.com. That's where I have all of my content. And from there, you can link out to socials as well. I try my best to really produce content on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And quality content, right? I feel like if it was fluff, I can do that freely. Some days, I think I haven't written anything in 2 weeks. And I'm like, I'm okay with that. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. In the last 2 weeks, I've had a lot to say. I've actually already have something written that I would like to post, but I haven't had a chance to edit it yet Could I post it? Sure, but I want to make sure that when I'm posting, I want to make sure that I'm giving quality and something that I could be proud of and look back and say, yes, this is what I did. So if I don't feel that way, I just don't do it. But it's my goal to continue to grow the community and just kind of have something there for others. It might not be something every single week, twice for the week, but there's so much content that's already on the blog that someone can definitely browse around and look about.
Okay. And is it mostly social work related, or is it just a collection of different topics?
Yeah, I would say it's a collection of topics. I tend to write personal things, kind of like I was saying with my motivation and inspiration. I also write about my own experiences as someone, as a social worker living in New York City. I also write about mental health, right? I talk a lot about that because this is the part of my life that I'm like, yes, this is what I do and I'm really happy about it. And I also position myself as someone who can offer advice and help steer people in the right direction, and to kind of really thinking about myself as someone who can offer, like, be like a lifestyle coach. So really thinking of myself as doing those three things: personal writing, coaching, mental health, offering my services to others. Yeah.
Okay, great. So it's definitely been a very pleasant conversation with you as always. And it's been great having you. So we're going to sign off. Any final thoughts before we take it off?
I want to say thank you. This has been such a great experience. Such a great experience. I feel like it's also been unexpected. I feel like that's something I came into this not knowing what I was going to get and just kind of being open and saying. And I am so happy that I said yes. I saw your post and I said, yes, let me try. I could have been really scared and say, oh no. But I'm really happy that I did. I feel like I've learned so much in this short period of time. And I like the fact that our relationship is so collaborative. And that I'm learning from you, you're learning from me, and we talk about the future. And I'm like, this is such a nice thing to have gotten out of this simple post that you made. And I want to say thank you.
You're welcome. I definitely feel the same way. It's definitely a growing friendship and colleagueship and all of that. So, and I forgot to tell y'all about the accountability tracker that we have. And it's so great. I was like, oh, this is what I've been missing all my life. I need an accountability tracker. So we're definitely accountability partners. And even though we only really talk once a month, we stay in touch with each other through this accountability tracker. We can update it. It's a shared document. And so we put our goals and what date we want to reach them by. And if we started on them, if we completed them, if we haven't started, like all of that stuff is great. So like I said, executive, macro kind of person, organized. So you're great. And I appreciate you as well. And the relationship that we're building. So thank you for coming and sharing your blog and sharing your story and just sharing everything that you've shared with us this evening. And so for those of you who have made it this far, even if you're watching this back, if you would like a special discount on the 90-day pre-recorded tutoring series, you only need to email me and put in your subject in the email, Ayoka the blogger, and you will get a very huge discount of $150 off. The regular rate is $200. And your rate will be $50. And this rate will be good until December 31st of this year, of 2021. So kudos to you for making it to the end. And if you want that discount, then again, email me. My email will be below. Ayoka's contact will be below to her blog and any other information she wants you to have, as well as the assessment, the ProQOL. And I guess we'll put a link to something related to aphantasia as well if people want to look more into that. And don't forget to let us know if you are or have experienced aphantasia. So good night, good morning, whatever time it is that you're watching this. And we will check y'all out later.